In this video, we're going to take a quick look at how to make a simple cup or vase or vessel using Rhino. And when you open up Rhino for the first time, you might see this screen and you could choose small objects millimeters or small objects inches. Either way would be fine, doesn't really matter. First thing you'll see is that there are 4 viewports, and if you double click on the name of the viewport, it will maximize that viewport in the whole window. Something I wanted to point out really quickly is that there are different display modes in Rhino. So for example, what you see right here is wireframe, but if I left click on this button, it becomes a shaded viewport, which is the way we usually work. You could also choose ghosted like this, which allows you to see the inside of the form. And there are many other options as well, including rendered, which looks really nice like this, but can be taxing on your computer GPU. So for the most part, we like to use this solid setting. Another thing that's really useful is this gumball tool, which is down at the bottom. So if that's turned on, you see this sort of widget with a number of arrows and boxes. If you pull on the arrows, you can move an object on that axis, X, Y, or Z. If you pull on one of the arcs, you can rotate the object on that axis. And if you pull on the little squares, you will scale the object in one dimension. And if you hold down the Shift key and pull on one of those squares, you can scale the object in all 3 dimensions simultaneously. In addition to being able to just wing it like that, you can also type in a value. So you can click on one of those handles and specify exactly how much you want to manipulate the form. So in this case, I might put in 10 as a value or -10, and it will move the object by 10 units, whether you're using millimeters or inches or what have you. So deleting that, and wanted to look at making a cup or a vessel form. So going to start with a simple circle. I'm using grid snap just because I like things to click to the grid, but you don't have to do that. And so I'm just making a small circle here. At the moment, I'm not really even worried about the scale. And what I want to do is I want to make some copies of this. So the way that I'm going to start is by just typing in copy. One of the ways you can do things in Rhino is to just type in commands. And so it will ask me where I want to make a copy from. And if I hover over this, I can select center. And then you can see that it is giving me these options on the ground plane to copy that to. Unfortunately, I'd rather copy this sort of up in the air. So this is an instance where I would switch the viewport, and I'm going to copy this in the Z direction. And you can see if I hold down the Shift key, it will constrain that to a vertical axis up above where I'm starting here. So I'm starting at center, and then I'm making a few copies as I go along. So I can make maybe 5 or 6 of these. Then going to switch out of the right viewport and go back to the perspective viewport. And I can see these circles that have been made and copied. And these are going to be the basis for this vessel or pitcher or vase that I'm going to make. One helpful tool is ZSA. So you can type ZSA and press enter, and it will zoom in to the selected object in all 4 viewpoints. So sometimes when you're scrolling around, you can kind of lose your object in space. So the first thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to hold down the Shift button and click on the little scale square, and I'm just going to change the size of these to make basically the profile of sort of a vase form. So you can kind of see that. So I was just scaling them all in 3 dimensions to make a simple sort of vase outline form. Then I want to make sort of a body for this. I want to give this a skin. So I'm going to use a command called Loft. I can type in L-O-F-T and press enter, and then it will ask me to select the curves that I want to loft. Once I've done that, I can press enter, and you get this little preview window. So this is sort of the normal setting. I could choose loose, which is just a little bit looser. Tight will follow those arcs a little bit more faithfully. Straight sections would make this kind of faceted in between. And I would recommend just using the normal setting most of the time. There is an option to close that loop, but in this case, we're not going to do that. So with the closed loft, it would bend all the way around back to the beginning, but I'm not going to enable that. And I won't use the options down at the bottom of this window. So I can click OK, and I have made this simple vase form. And you'll see if I move this along that the surface is separate from the curves. And that's great. That means we can reuse the curves and make something different potentially. So that's what I'm going to do now. So instead of holding down Shift, I'm just going to manipulate these little scale squares on one axis so that I'm kind of making these narrower, making these elliptical, just kind of remaking this form as a less symmetrical form and something that uses these ellipses a little bit more. And once I've done that, I will use Loft again. I like to just type in LOFT. One thing I wanted to mention is if you do them in a strange order, you will get sort of a strange result. So I want to do this Loft process one at a time in sequence rather than going, let's say, bottom to top, then in the middle. So if I loft that, you can see in the preview, it looks different because I have changed the sort of the curves that make this up, that are sort of the ribs of the piece. I can click OK, and I could keep on experimenting with these same curves. So in Rhino, they call the lines, sort of the drawn lines, curves, and the objects are referred to as surfaces or polysurfaces. So in this case, I'm taking the exact same curves and I'm using the rotate tool and just changing the orientation of those curves a little bit in space, just to kind of knock it off of centeredness. And I will use the Loft tool again on this. Again, doing these in the correct order, then pressing Enter. And you'll see that now I get a really different result. So it has this kind of inherent twist in the form. And if I'm looking at this in a rendered viewport, I can kind of see a little bit more of a shaded preview of what that looks like. And you can also see how the surfaces and the curves look a little bit different in the rendered viewport. Again, if you have a very powerful computer, you could just model in the rendered viewport. If you're working on a laptop or a little bit older computer, it's probably best to go back to the solid modeling viewport. So another alteration I could make here would be to rotate these on a different axis. So I'm using the green rotate tool here. I believe that is that would be the Z axis. And just kind of rotating these one by one as they go along. And I'll use the Loft tool again. And we'll get another different result from that. So you can see these kind of get sequentially more complex, less symmetrical, maybe a little bit stranger as we go along. But it's a really nice tool and process for generating many different types of forms relatively quickly.